Our next commentator is Shoaib Sultan. The presentation online says that Shoaib is a politician. Now he is a lot more, and he is invited here for a lot of other reasons, and I would mention just a few of them. Sultan has previously worked as an information officer at the European Council of Religious Leaders. He was the first Secretary General of the Islamic Council of Norway between 2007 and 2010. In 2011, Sultan was hired as an advisor with responsibility for mapping the extreme right in Norway at the Norwegian Center Against Racism. Shoaib is today a prolific writer. He writes columns for several Norwegian newspapers. He is often used as a commentator and analyst in Norwegian media with regards to questions that deal with multiculturalism and especially Islam in Norway. Sultan is also a member of the Green Party of Norway, and since 2011 a deputy to the City Council in Oslo, where we're now at. So, Sultan, the screen is yours. Still no contact with Shoaib? Now there's some sound.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the presentation and for the invitation. And I'm really honored to be asked to talk about this subject. And it's, I have to admit, promising, scary, and quite humbly, to be honest, all at the same time. Now, the advancement in this field are great. And as with much other technologies, the promises are too. A picture of an individual suspect tracking the family of a given subject and getting to him or her, well, usually it's a him. It sounds like a great idea and a great promise from the science of forensic DNA. And I listened with interest to the presentations from the previous days, and especially the one from Professor Ahmad Msharek. And while I'm quite impressed with the possibilities, I'm also concerned that we can be blinded by these and miss the shortcomings. The problem with using these technologies, as far as I understand them at least, is that the promise is not necessarily spoken out, but it exists out there in the public. It's a short promise and the surety that we can say something about who committed a given crime. And one can talk about how it's not meant to shed the light of suspicion on the racial minority group, but we know that that's usually the way it works. I also fear that we can get further marginalization and suspicion thrust upon minority groups. Now, this kind of technology tends to be more of use when you're trying to identify someone within a minority group rather than somebody from a majority group. And the problem with that is that we know that for politicians, and especially with a built-up public pressure from a given case, it would be easier to push for policies which target minority groups and trample on their rights. I mean, it's sort of like the whole discussion about why you should, if you haven't done anything wrong, why should you mind being, followed by the police everywhere you go and everything you do? We do have some problems with that, but when it only hits a certain group, usually people tend to not be that concerned. And I see some parallel issues with other technologies, such as face recognition software. We have seen that it's quite accurate and can be used on people with a lighter skin tone, but it becomes less and less reliable with darker skin tones. And I think it was a run-through of the American Congress where they wrongly identified a number of members of Congress as criminal people, and it was all of the ones who were misidentified were people with a black skin color. So the error margins, I think, should be in the forefront of these debates. I think that we need to have a focus not only on what these technologies can do, but we be quite open and focused upon what they can't do. We can have an idea of how somebody maybe looks like, but the second you put out a picture, you have sort of framed the debate. And it can also, I mean, one thing is you are targeting and marginalizing people, but at the same time, I'm afraid that you can end up getting so focused on that you miss other things, especially when the error margins with regards to eye color or other things can be as huge as we have learned here. I would also like to end my talk with one of my favorite movies, an American sci-fi movie, which I think is one of the most underrated and, of course, according to me, greatest movies of the 1990s, Gattaca. It's about a society where the genes determine everything, and somebody with what is considered a weak DNA has no way to move ahead. Now our hero, of course, finds a way, but the question raised is how we need to remember that you cannot use genes to determine things like the human spirit. And I think that is a great place for me to end here. And thank you so much for the invitation again, and I look forward to the debate.
Thank you, Shoaib, and for pointing to maybe some of the more important topics that we will get back to.